Good afternoon. Welcome to this Ask the Expert event focused on breastfeeding. Today, a panel of experts will share the information that you want to know about what to expect when breastfeeding, how to prepare for breastfeeding prior to delivery, and where to find resources and support. We will also answer your questions live. No question is off limits, so ask away. To submit a question for our panel, simply drop it in the chat here on Facebook. Today's panelists have a ton of experience with breastfeeding and are absolute experts in their fields. These awesome ladies have helped countless moms on their breastfeeding journeys. Let's meet them. First, we have Valerie Lemelin, a bachelor's prepared registered nurse and international board certified lactation consultant with Mary Washington Hospital. Val has been working with moms and babies since 2005 and has been with Mary Washington Healthcare for almost 16 years. She says the most rewarding part of her job is supporting a family through the early part of their parenting journey. Next, we have Kimberley Good, a bachelor's prepared registered nurse and the coordinator of parent and child education here at Mary Washington Healthcare. Kimberly is also a certified Lamaze childbirth educator and is an international board certified lactation consultant. Kimberly has been a nurse at Mary Washington Healthcare for 31 years. She has been with the Women's and Children's Program for 25 years, and in addition to her work as our coordinator of parent and child education, she teaches childbirth classes and assists with the lactation program. And finally, we have Donna Rolle, a bachelor's prepared registered nurse and international board certified lactation consultant at Stafford Hospital. Donna has been with Mary Washington Healthcare for 5 years and has 40 years of experience in caring for babies and parents. She says she feels privileged to assist at the bedside in the first few days to support, educate, and encourage new parents in ways that they can comfortably provide breast milk to their baby. Welcome and thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Val, I'd like you to start the program by telling our viewers a little bit about what to do if they're planning to breastfeed. What's the first thing that you recommend expecting moms do?
Usually we'll encourage people to think about taking a class or reading a book, trying to prepare themselves for the norms of that early journey in breastfeeding, and um, maybe checking with your insurance company as far as what kind of pump availability if you're going to be returning to work and you need to have that as part of your breastfeeding journey.
Yeah, it's definitely important to be armed with knowledge before you give birth, which will make reaching out for support when you need it afterwards so much easier. You can learn more about our breastfeeding classes at mybaby.mwhc.com. So Val, I think there are probably a lot of misconceptions about breastfeeding. Either moms think it's going to be super easy or they think it's going to be really difficult and they don't want to try it all. Can you talk to us a little bit about some realistic expectations when learning to breastfeed for the first or second or third time?
Sure. I remember when we were teaching the classes in person, and I would always ask at the beginning of the class, what's one thing you've heard about breastfeeding? And there was sadly not usually a positive thing that they'd heard. It's hard, it's painful. So one of the things that I like to encourage people is to consider themselves that they're learning not only how to breastfeed, but they're learning about a baby. They're learning about a newborn and what is normal newborn behavior, and that's some of the stuff that we'll start to talk about when they're here in the hospital, but also just reading and learning prior to the delivery will give them a little bit of a head start.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so prepare for the class, line up some support. I usually tell people, some support when you get home is a big thing that I don't know that everybody always thinks about as far as meals and then before you go from the hospital, learning where are the resources for when I get home. If I feel like I'm still struggling, how do I reach you guys to ask questions or to possibly come in as an outpatient?
Absolutely. It's so important to know where to go to ask for help before you need it, because those first couple of days when you get home could be overwhelming. Um, Kim, Val told us a little bit about ways to prepare for breastfeeding before giving birth, and Mary Washington Healthcare actually offers several educational classes. Can you share a little bit about what the class options are and what our viewers can expect if they attend?
So yes, so Breastfeeding Essentials is a virtual course. It's taught via Microsoft Teams. It is free. It's usually held once a month on a Sunday. and it's about 2.5 hours. I do encourage you to sign up at least 3 to 4 months in advance. Although it is virtual, we do limit the participants because, you know, it is difficult to see everybody on screen. What can you expect in the course? So you can anticipate, definitely, we're going to talk about some of the things that Val just touched base on. We're going to talk about normal newborn behavior, particularly here in the hospital. We're going to talk about milk production. That's definitely, you know, how does milk production occur? We're going to answer such questions, which are common questions that most parents have. How do I know the baby's getting anything? How do I know the baby's getting enough? We're going to talk about when, and number one question, when can I start pumping? So we're going to talk about that as well. We're going to talk about latching, positioning. Yes. And definitely invite your support partner. They are your number one resource as far as a cheerleading support to make sure it's a good breastfeeding journey for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The classes I know I've heard have been so helpful for so many people. Just having that being armed with that knowledge going into the journey is super helpful. So Donna, we've taken the classes, we've read the books, and now we've given birth to a beautiful new baby. What do you recommend moms do in those first few hours after birth to support successful breastfeeding?
So really, the best thing that you can do right now and right after the birth is to actually put your baby skin to skin. And what that means is actually taking your baby with just the diaper on, putting baby up on your chest, no gown, anything between you guys, and then putting blankets over top. And as that happens, it's amazing the changes that can or help the baby to acclimate to the world. So they are able to regulate their temperature, their blood sugar, their breathing. They've got to remember they've just come from inside a very dark, quiet place, and now it's noisy and stuff. So that will help calm them, but it also gets them prepared for breastfeeding. So as they start showing these early feeding cues, then babies will start kind of moving their way toward the breast, and then they'll get latched on. We have usually somebody there with you to help you get the baby's initial feeding to go well, but it'll help you relax. Just trust your instincts. Your baby, that time, they're not going to feed right away. So just let them rest on you. Just love on your baby. That's going to be one of the best things that you can do.
Awesome. And you said they aren't interested in feeding right away. So typically, how long after birth do you suggest that moms try their first feeding?
Well, anytime the baby's showing feeding cues, so meaning they're opening their mouth, they're licking a little bit with their tongue, they're trying to bob their head. If they're in this position, you'll see them bobbing, 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 and actually trying to go toward the breast. Those are all good feeding cues. And that's when you want to get the baby to the breast. Typically, we see it within the first hour. But some babies, they have more of a traumatic delivery and it takes them a little bit longer. Some come out ready to eat as soon as they are born. So it really is going to be by your baby's feeding cues.
Awesome. Good to know. I know that's always my first question when I've had my babies is when do I do it? So it's good to know that it's kind of different for every baby. So speaking of those first few days after birth, tell us kind of what we can expect with milk production. I know there's a misconception sometimes that, you're just going to be flooded with milk, producing 8 ounces at a time, and that's not necessarily the case. So tell us what you can about that.
Yeah, so a lot of moms come in expecting to have a real full feeling in their breast, already have stuff in the freezer. I mean, they get online and have these kinds of expectations, but your body's been producing colostrum, which is that first milk, since you're about 5 months pregnant. So it's really there. It's just that it's a small amount. It's about a teaspoon. So as you're not going to really feel that milk, flowing, you're not going to feel it transfer. You're not even really going to feel any changes in your breast at the beginning. But as the baby feeds, it stimulates that more milk production. So if we take milk out, your body makes more. And usually by around the third day, you start feeling some fullness in your breast. So at that point, it's really still colostrum that whole first week, but then you're adding this mature milk, which is much thinner, it's higher in volume, and so you get that real full feeling. So a lot of moms think, I don't have any milk, I don't have any milk, and they do. It's just that we don't feel it when it's happening.
And I know that, our newborn babies have to go see their pediatrician just a couple days after discharge. And many parents are very concerned by the fact that their baby has lost some weight from their birth weight. But is this normal? Can you tell us about that?
Very normal. So even babies who are bottle fed are going to lose weight the first 3 days. They can lose up to 10% of their birth weight as long as they've got a good output. And that's how we'll know the baby's getting enough, is their output. The first day, we're just looking for one wet diaper, one poopy diaper. Baby might lose 5% of their birth weight. The next day, they might lose a little bit less, but then they usually by 2 weeks, they're back to their birth weight. We want to see 6 to 8 wet diapers and a couple good stools each day at that point. And mom's going to have that fullness before, emptiness after too. So first 2 weeks can be really challenging.
So it sounds like the recommendation might be to worry less about like how much milk you're producing and more about your baby's output. So pay more closer attention to those wet diapers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll give them a log to keep track in the hospital of how many wet diapers, how many poopy diapers, and then how many feedings they're doing, because we really want to give them, well, I always say 8 to 12 attempted feedings in the first 24 hours, because your baby is going to be sleepy. So some of them might not be that great in the first 24 hours, but then it should be 8 to 12 feedings. One wet diaper for each day they are old, couple good stools each day after the first day. So those are all good guidelines.
Awesome. Thank you.
Typically, weight gain starts to take off once the mom's volume starts to increase. So that's why the pediatricians are going to be kind of monitoring what the weight loss is. And if there looks like there's any issues, then they may have the baby come back sooner than that 2-week checkup. But that's when they start to really increase their volume out and output and start to gain weight.
That's good to know. That's good to know that the pediatrician will kind of monitor that too. Wonderful. So something that I think moms are often surprised about is how demanding breastfeeding is. It's very much kind of a full-time job. So Kim, can you tell us some ways that you suggest moms take care of themselves during those first few weeks after they're home after giving birth?
So definitely one, they want to make sure they're eating a well-balanced diet. Okay. They need to make sure they're drinking plenty of fluids, but contrary to what they're seeing on TikTok and social media, drinking tons and tons and tons does not mean tons and tons of breast milk, because they can actually overhydrate the body. Most breastfeeding moms will tell you they'll be thirsty, so drink to thirst. Limit your caffeine. Not saying that you can't have your morning cup of coffee. I have to have my morning cup of coffee just so I don't kill my husband. But we don't want to be drinking those high energy, the Red Bulls, and largely caffeinated. And the best advice I wish someone had told me when I brought home a newborn baby, when that baby's sleeping during the day, sleep. Okay. Because your baby will be up at night nursing. And if you haven't slept all day, then you're up at night. It's overwhelming. And definitely have your support team. Really, in your pregnancy, that's the big planning that you can do. Who is coming in to help you to do those things, particularly in the first, anywhere, I would even say up to the first month, who can help you with laundry, who can help you with, household chores, making meals. It really should be mom just taking care of herself and her baby, and let your team be there to do those other things. She's more likely to succeed if she has that good support team.
Yeah, I find that to be extremely true. I think the best gift that I was given postpartum was my mom came and stayed with us and took care of everything so that I could just focus on what I needed to do, which it's a huge help. And I think moms need to be willing to accept that help. It's so easy to try to do everything ourselves, but we need to accept that help. So Donna, while it's our hope that everyone has a smooth breastfeeding experience, it's often not the case. So can we talk a little bit about possible bumps in the road and how to manage them? Some of the common challenges that moms face when breastfeeding.
Well, I think one is just the confidence. The first couple weeks, you really feel like all thumbs, and it's not, excuse me, it's not unusual for you to need somebody else to be there to help you, learning just kind of the best way to hold your baby and different things like that. But you can, if the baby is not latching on well, it can cause problems with the soreness in the nipples. It can cause problems with emptying the breast. The baby might not be able to empty the breast. The baby might have something in their mouth that's tight. So like under the tongue, it might be tight. Under the lip, it might be tight. And those things can cause not only nipple damage, but it can cause problems with transferring the milk. So then you might see that the baby's not gaining weight too. So those are a couple things.
Is there any amount of nipple soreness that's sort of like normal or expected, or is any kind of cracked, bleeding, painful nipple a problem that someone needs to seek out help for?
So I see in the first few days, they can have tenderness, but they should not have any bleeding or blisters or bruising anywhere. If that's happening, then there's something where it's usually the baby's not getting deep enough on, and she probably just needs a little help to realize she can bring that baby in a little deeper. So the first couple days, it's not unusual to have that tenderness. And a lot of times the baby's learning too. So they might get on and not have a real coordinated suck. They might chomp a little. They might push their tongue forward as they're learning how to actually transfer that milk. So that can be uncomfortable, even for moms who've done this before.
Mm-hmm. What about a low supply issue? You mentioned that a pediatrician is probably going to be the one that finds that problem, because you'll notice that from the baby's output or weight gain. What about if moms are worried about low supply?
So if moms are worried about a low supply, they definitely want to be followed up by lactation. They can have a weight before a feeding, a weight after, to know how is the baby transferring, how much are they transferring. Obviously, following up with their pediatrician at the very beginning frequently is important if they are not gaining weight like they should. And if they're having problems like that, then we would recommend that they are pumping to make sure they're emptying their breast. If the baby needs to be supplemented, we would use that milk and supplement. And really following up with a lactation at that point is really important.
Absolutely. So speaking of our lactation consultants, Kimberley, the days following, leaving the hospital can be a blur, and, you've got sleep deprivation, you've got a new family member to take care of, lots of information being thrown your way. So it's often that moms have questions when they get home.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share some resources that Mary Washington Healthcare has available for new parents?
So absolutely, and these resources are not just for our moms that deliver at Mary Washington or Stafford. It's for any newly delivered breastfeeding mom, whether this is your first baby or baby number 6. We're available for our entire community. The first thing we want to definitely suggest you attend or consider attending is our Moms and Babies Support Group. It occurs every Wednesday, basically from 10 to 12. Always coordinated by a lactation consultant. It is free. There's no registration. Just come and you'll find, a sisterhood, a sisterhood of moms. And they're there from a first couple weeks to 6 months. And it's not just about breastfeeding. The coordinator usually will touch on topics such as introducing solids or sleeping through the night. And you'll get to interact with other new moms, moms who may be going through the same thing that you are, or moms who have gotten through that period of time, and they can share their experiences with you. And the neat thing about our Moms and Babies group that we love to advertise, we recently did a community baby shower, and we had the opportunity to meet a grandmother who her daughter, she went to Moms and Babies with when she was pregnant with her, and now her daughter is pregnant, expecting her first. So the longevity is there, and it's amazing support. But the other thing that we offer to you is our lactation warm line. You'll have access to a phone number where you can call, leave a very detailed message, and one of our LCs will call you back and answer your questions. And if we feel you and your baby could use a lactation outpatient visit, that's available as well. Most insurances do pay for those, do anticipate. We typically do those Monday through Friday, typically 1 to 2 a day, depending on census. And it's probably about an hour and a half visit with one-on-one with an LC. And definitely, take advantage of that as well. So don't feel like you're out there on your own when you leave us. We offer a lot of support, and definitely give us a call.
Absolutely. We have a lot of resources available. We also have the Health Link nurses line. So if you have concerns about yourself or your baby, you can call Health Link. They're available from 7 a.m. to midnight, and you can call them at 540-741-1000. Val, Kimberly talked a little bit about the lactation consultant, lactation consultation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that in detail? What can a mom expect if they're coming in for a consultation?
Sure. First of all, during your hospital stay, whatever is happening at the time of discharge, if things are not going smoothly, we're going to give an individualized plan of care for you and your baby to make sure your baby stays safe and to protect your milk supply based on your own goals. So once you get home, if things are either you're in a situation where you're needing some extra tasks to do, like pumping, or if things start to go, feel like you just need some extra support after you've gone to the pediatrician, or and they find out the baby's not gaining, or you're told to supplement. So a lot of times the pediatrician sometimes even suggests to the mom to call. So we get the voicemail, we call back, we find out what your goal is and what the issue is. And if it's clear that we can't just answer it over the phone, we're going to set you up a time to come on in. We'll explain how you come, what do you bring, where do you go? And it's most often we're going to observe a feeding, do a weighted feed, talk about your goals, talk about how we can adjust the plan, and just to give you some extra support. And sometimes people even come back as a follow-up if they do certain things and then they find that they still need to get some help. Most insurances are going to cover it. So that would be something where you'd want to make sure that you know what your resources are prior to delivery. And when you're talking about ordering a pump, you may want to ask your insurance about, do you cover outpatient visits too? And just to clarify, the outpatient visits are billed through the hospital. It's not, there are lactation consultants in the community that can come to your home, but most of those situations you're going to pay up front and see if your insurance will reimburse. Where when you come to a hospital setting, it's like any other service that you've gotten, like if you come in for a lab or a procedure. So the hospital is billing it. And so I think some of the insurance companies are a little confused exactly about outpatient support afterwards. So if you're concerned or questioning something, also ask us about that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. It sounds like the lactation consultation is really thorough. If it's an hour and a half, do you go over like education and stuff like that too during that time, or is it a lot of like hands-on?
It can be involving both. Normally we'll kind of ask the mom what kind of issue that you want to work on. We usually have a copy of the discussion during the phone call. So, and then we observe a feed. We usually do a wait before the baby latches, and then we do a wait, and then we do a concluding wait, and then talk about mom's goals and based on what happens during the consult. Does every single problem get solved? No, but I think I've never had a mom come in and feel like that it was a waste of time. They get a lot of emotional support and a lot of support over whatever the shift in her plan might need to be.
Great. And is a lactation consultation something that is typically like a one-time thing? Do people tend to have to come back and see you multiple times?
Not generally. Usually it's sometimes it's a one-time thing. Sometimes they adjust their plan and then they may want to follow up. But I do encourage people in the hospital situation of not waiting and just struggling for 6 weeks. If it seems like they're really having an issue and they've gone to the pediatrician and there's only so long you can survive in the hamster wheel of pumping and latching and trying. You really need an adjustment into that plan sooner. We do encourage them not to make an appointment on the same day that they might have a pediatrician appointment, since we're trying to time a feed, but we would discuss that during the time that they made the phone call.
Okay, great. Thank you. So at this point, we've reached the section of our program today where we are going to do a little Q&A. So for our viewers, if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We do have a couple of frequently asked questions from our new moms that I want to ask you guys. So Valerie, I know we've mentioned the TikTok, Instagram, all the education that people are getting from social media these days. And one of the things that we see a lot of is moms raving about milk collection devices like the Haka, something that goes on the breast that's not being fed on by the baby, that is supposed to help you, collect milk faster. So what are your thoughts on devices like that? Do you recommend them? Do you not recommend them? What do you think?
The Haka or similar silicone devices are not real pricey, so it's not a bad idea to have, but a lot of people get ahead of themselves and start to collect milk that's dripping. Just to clarify, biologically, when your baby is on one side, you're going to have milk flow start on both breasts. So some people feel like they're supposed to collect every single drop that's falling, because why would we want to waste anything? And some devices are more passive collection of milk, and others are more of a suction. And it can complicate things a little bit in that they're sucking too much milk out. And so when the baby goes to I call it the dessert side, sometimes the dessert is in the bottle over there. And it can complicate even weight gain in a baby. So some of us have started to say, put it on the third side. And I suggest sometimes that they learn from old people that have done this, and you can actually do gentle compression on the breast that's leaking, and it'll actually make it stop. So, I get their wide-eyed look like, oh, you can do that? So I kind of encourage them, learn from people that had to do this prior to pumps and all the tools, because there's a market for everything for when you look at what's on Amazon now.
Absolutely. That's very true. So another question that we have frequently, I'll ask this one of you, Kim, is one that's probably, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say to this one, but when should one introduce a bottle to a breastfed baby?
So the best advice on that is, first, make sure breastfeeding is well established. Make sure your baby is back to birth weight. Make sure you're seeing those 6 to 8 heavy wet diapers a day, and at least those 3 to 4 yellow seedy stools. Typically we say usually about the 3 to 4 week mark. Okay. The baby should be back to birth weight, feeding well, so that when we do introduce a bottle, it's not going to cause any type of confusion. So I would say at least usually about 3 to 4 weeks, and then plan for that you are still putting your baby to the breast, and you, after morning feeds, you would typically do maybe a extra 10 or 15 minute pumping, and realize it may take a couple of those pumpings to create a 2-ounce bottle. And then when introducing that bottle, let somebody other than yourself, meaning maybe your partner's home, or a grandma, or a sitter, or a friend, so that the baby associates the bottle with someone else, and then the baby associates you with the breast, so that you can when you come home from work, you are still, doing your nighttime feedings at the breast.
That's great advice. So another question that I have personally is, what I've heard a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers, struggle with introducing a bottle to a breastfed baby. Is that something that a lactation consultation can help with if a baby refuses to take a bottle?
Well, yeah, I would say a lot of times it will depend on how long you've waited. I mean, I know Val can attest to this. We've had moms call us. They've been out 8 to 12 weeks of maternity leave, and they're calling us, and they've gone through 12 different bottles with this baby because the baby just won't. And I like to joke, but I'm kind of serious. Yes, the baby knows that that's the BMW. Why have the Chevy when you can have the BMW? So that would probably definitely be a call, and we can make some suggestions of how, but we definitely say you don't want to wait till right before you go back to work. Earlier at that 3 to 4 week mark is probably your best bet to avoid that from happening.
Absolutely.
I think one of the issues is they often will introduce the bottle at around a month. And I also want to clarify, anytime the baby gets a bottle, if you're maintaining your supply, you do need to pump during that missed feeding at the breast. But they begin to work on feeding their freezer, and they forget that they need to do the practice bottle at least every 2 or 3 days to keep the baby familiar with it. And I think that's where some moms get in trouble. It goes so well at a month that they forget to try again or don't do it with deliberateness. And so then they have the 1 week before they're going back to work, the baby has begun to refuse the bottle. So there's
Yep.
no magic.
No magic. There's no magic, Val.
It's a
We
lot
need
of
some
practice,
magic.
persistence. I mean, everybody sees the things on social memes where they've got the dad with the picture of mom and her shirt and the bottles in his armpit. So,
Yep.
So if you're kind of persistent about doing it frequently enough, then I think most babies don't seem to have as much of an issue with maintaining it.
Absolutely. And speaking of feeding the freezer and going back to work, Donna, this question I'm going to ask of you. When do you recommend that moms start using a breast pump? And do you have any tips for pumping effectively?
So starting to pump again, I think Kim was saying that we, wait until the breastfeeding is well established. Pretty much the same time frame of 3 to 4 weeks seems to be a good time to really introduce that pump. And again, offer the bottles. If they're getting ready to go back to work, I usually recommend 2 to 3 weeks before to start doing that morning time pumping. So your baby's fed, and then you're going to pump after that. And I think Kim was saying that too. You're not going to collect a whole 2-ounce bottle right then. Your baby's just been feeding. So you do that for a couple of weeks, you're going to have enough for when you go back to work. First couple of days probably. And then when you're at work, it's really important for you to pump when your baby would normally be feeding. That way, it'll keep your supply going, and then you'll take that milk, make sure you've got like a cooler of some type, some ice to put it on to transport it, but you're going to bring that home, and then you can use that milk the next day. So that's why you don't need a whole freezer full.
Absolutely. That advice changed my whole mentality when I had my newborn. Was, you only need enough milk for the next day. You do not need a freezer full to last you, a month. You just need enough for the next day. That took a lot of stress off of me personally. So that was definitely good advice. Kim, shifting gears a little bit away from pumping. So there's a lot of focus in our culture and our society on babies sleeping through the night. I feel like that's the common question moms get is, are they sleeping through the night yet? But I think most of us know that have any experience with the newborn baby that doesn't always happen. So what can we expect with a breastfed baby in nighttime waking?
So yes, you do hear that and it is annoying to be a new mother and your family. Is the baby sleeping through the night? And physiologically, breastfed babies aren't going to sleep through the night, not for several months. That you'll find initially they have to feed frequently. Their stomachs are very, very tiny. And breast milk, that's the neat thing about breast milk, is that it's so easily digestible, hence why they don't have problems having bowel movements and constipation. And it's digestible, so it empties the gut quickly. So they are going to need to eat more frequently. They can and should anticipate, maybe start working at a little bit of a pattern of when it's time to breastfeed your baby at night, make sure you keep it dark. Make sure you keep it quiet. Try to lay the baby back down in his or her bassinet or crib right before they get into that deep sleep. Keep it quiet, keep it dark. Save playtime for daytime is what we like to say. And then as your baby starts getting more and more weight, we usually say, they should be back to their birth weight, about at 2-week mark. But then probably when they're about a month old or 2 months old, they're getting a little bit more chunkier. And so they'll be able, their fat storage is increasing. So you may start seeing, will they still wake? Absolutely. But you may see that they'll sleep for longer periods as the night goes on, and just be patient. And, that's why the important advice of sleep during the day when your babies are sleeping, and those nighttime feedings won't seem so overwhelming.
Absolutely. Great advice. And solidarity, mamas, because we're all awake at 2 a.m. So we're all there with you.
Ashley, I
Yeah.
want to just return briefly to the pumping question. The one thing that will give you a different variation on when do I start is going to be what's happening at discharge. Do we have a latching baby that's going consistently, or do we have a 36-weeker that's a little premature but didn't make it to the NICU? Those are moms that might have to do a couple times a day after feeding pumping to make sure we preserve any sort of decline in milk production if the baby is not transferring as well as we think. And most first-time moms are not necessarily going to know what does it look like when a baby is suckling well. And, sometimes they can be kind of sleeping at the breast and not moving the milk. So those are individualized situations that we might discuss what sort of changes you might make for your particular situation. If you've got a healthy term baby, I like how one of my colleagues answers that question of when do I start pumping? And she says, when you're ready to add something more to your day. So you can see there's variation, and this situation is no problem, but this situation might need a little bit more focused on supporting milk supply. Most babies are transferring milk well as they get close to their due date. So that kind of gives a range for moms to know how long they may need to support whatever the baby's doing.
Absolutely. Great advice. And in kind of that same vein, our next question is at what point do you seek out a lactation consultant? Like, when do you know that that the problem is like bad enough to need outside help? What's your suggestions there?
I don't think they really need to wait until they're desperate. I kind of jokingly say, your insurance will cover it. So if you just want to come for reassurance, that's fine. As long as we have the time, it's not a problem. It doesn't need to be a crisis. But if they go to the pediatrician and the baby is not gaining consistently, and the pediatrician is wanting them to start supplementing to protect the baby, those are situations that might benefit from a good evaluation of what's going on. Is this a baby issue? Is this a supply issue? All of those things can kind of be evaluated overall at an outpatient visit. And again, like I said before, not waiting for weeks and weeks while you're floundering, trying to figure out what you're going to do. It would be beneficial to come sooner rather than later. Although we occasionally do have an older baby where sometimes it's about a tongue tie, or they've been told to come in, or, so it's more usual for us to see very young babies for our outpatients.
Yeah, that's a great point that I really wouldn't have ever thought of before, that, just come and get some reassurance. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dire problem to seek out, the expert care that you guys have. You can just come and make sure that everything is working the way it should.
It's interesting. Sometimes we'll have a mom come in and she'll look at me and of course it's not going to happen here. Like the problem won't happen.
It never does.
But sometimes it's good that everything does look like fine. So it's helpful to them, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have kind of one final question, and to our viewers, if there's anyone out there that has questions, please feel free to leave it in our chat. We want to talk a little bit more about moms returning to work. We've kind of touched on that a little bit when we talked about pumping and things like that. So Donna, I'll pose this question to you first, and everyone else feel free to chime in. a lot of moms in our culture are going to be returning to work after maternity leave, and they want to continue to breastfeed. So can you guys share with us your tips for being successful when returning to work and keeping up with your breastfeeding?
Well,
think
I'm gonna just add on there that the being successful at it takes time too. You want to make sure that when you're using a pump, the flange size is right, that it's comfortable. If you're pumping and you're having pain, that is going to just lessen your supply. You get all tense, you can't relax, and it's important to be able to relax. So when you are pumping, if you're having any problems with pain, contact a lactation consultant. We'll walk you through and try to figure that out. But if you can set up a spot where you can have a picture of your baby or watching a video, some soft music, anything that really helps you relax is going to help you when you are pumping to get that supply. That's one of the things I would recommend.
it would be good to talk to your employer before you return to work so that you can make sure that there is a private place. It can be very intimidating to try to pump when you've got somebody about to come in a door or so. And to be honest, there's a lot of teachers that struggle because their planning period might not be at a convenient time to pump. So planning out sort of where you're going to, the frequency, and then additionally, we sometimes get questions about which type of pump is best, since there's, I mean, if you look on Amazon, there is many different types. So we anecdotally can answer which ones seem to have the best results, because there's not a lot of point in investing a lot of minutes when you're not having a good emptying, because that's kind of the whole point of it.
The other thing is there are laws out there for breastfeeding women, breastfeeding people, really, breastfeeding and chest feeding. But if you go to Virginia's Breastfeeding Coalition, Coalition, am I saying it right? I'm sorry. There you're going to find a link to the current laws, and they actually just passed a pump law back in December to protect moms with pumping at work. So employers are really supposed to provide you with a private place where, like Val was saying, you're not going to have somebody coming in and out. But they've also said that you can now have the time that you need to pump for your child up through 1 year. Now, it might not be paid break time, but it's to be there for you. So, and then there are also laws that, like, you can breastfeed in public. You're not going to get arrested for indecent exposure. That is another law that will protect you too. Not so much with working, but it's there.
There are lots of protections, definitely. And, we've come a long way. We have a long way to go, but, things are getting better. So familiarize yourself definitely with what your workplace's, availability is and what the federal regulations and protections surrounding breastfeeding are.
It can be really hard if you're the first one that's having to approach an employer about this, or if you work in a field where it's largely dominated by men. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to be the one to push if that's not your normal personality. Mm-hmm. So kind of it's good to discuss this during the pregnancy and anticipating your return, rather than suddenly you've got a crisis and they're not even realizing that they have to support you in this.
Absolutely. It's great advice. We did have a question from a viewer. They would like to know your thoughts on power pumping to increase milk supply.
Go ahead, Val.
Well, I generally describe it as the number one intervention for milk production is breast emptying, whether it's an efficient baby or an efficient pump. If somebody is borderline struggling, they want to ask about the cookies and the brownies and the herbs. but you have to pull back and say the number one intervention is frequency of emptying and efficiency of whatever I'm using to empty my breast. So the power pumping is one of those things where you can see it online and you could probably try it for a day or two just to see if you see an increase. But I have to remind moms sometimes if you start to increase the number of emptyings, initially it might look like you're dropping your supply because the frequency is going to increase and you're not going to have as much time to have your breast filled. So you almost have to look at what's happening in a 24-hour period versus each pumping, each breast, each time. It can get a little daunting and be very stressful. And so some of it's more just settling into what's the frequency, especially for example, we have a lot of NICU moms where they're relying entirely on pumping to keep their supply. And when they ask us about when their milk is starting to drop in volume, maybe a month in, the first question I'm not going to ask them is, did you take some of the cookies and the herbs? I'm going to say, how many times are you pumping in 24 hours? That is the answer oftentimes. And we can't, although we have great empathy for what that means, we cannot change the biology of how this works. So, and some of that times just the plan has to be adjusted to whatever that particular mom's circumstances are. If she's got 4 other kids running around versus and no support, that can be a very different situation than a mom that's got lots of support and she's by herself trying to do this. So again, that's where we're talking about individualizing a plan for whatever your circumstances are to be whatever. There's the perfect world and there's the doable world. So, and that's pretty much true for all of parenting, not just breastfeeding.
That's very true. Very, very true. Good advice. Donna, Kimberly, anything you want to say about power pumping?
I just will add in there, if you feel like you need to be power pumping, meaning you are concerned that your supply is not enough, reach out to one of us, reach out to Lactation, because we can, a lot of times you're thinking that you're not making enough, and yet your baby's growing well on the growth curve, you're doing just fine, but you don't have the freezer full. And that is something that we get from other moms saying, oh, you have to la, la, la. So if you are concerned, and I would highly recommend reaching out to us, because then we can look at the whole picture, like Val was saying. It's not going to be one thing for each person. It's going to be what's going to work for you. I have seen power pumping work for some women, but some women get so anxious or they're not getting enough sleep or something like this, and that's why they're not getting that full supply. So I would highly recommend just reaching out to one of us. We'd be glad to talk to you on the warm line, have you come in for a visit. We've got that support group. You could even go there and talk to them there while you're there. So, but reach out, because that you don't want to have to do this yourself. If you've got questions like that, call us.
Absolutely. We have lots and lots of resources available.
One of the things that's at the group too, which is there's a baby scale there. So some moms, you're not going to the pediatrician weekly, but this can be very reassuring to them when they weigh their baby each week and say, okay, things are going well, because this is how much the baby should be gaining at this point, and they kind of can relax a little bit. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, looks like we don't have any other questions for our Q&A. Ladies, is there anything else that you would like to say to our viewers or to, our pregnant moms or new parents about the breastfeeding journey? Anything you want to share with our audience today?
I think
I just want to encourage them. I really want to encourage you. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 6 months exclusive breastfeeding and continuing now up through 2 years because of all the benefits that breast milk provides for your baby, and also for the longer you breastfeed, the lower the risk for moms of some health things. So, but it's also something that it's a natural process for your milk to produce, but it's not, it's a learned behavior to breastfeed. And we just don't see it in society as much as in maybe other countries, but it's very doable. But it's the first couple of weeks can be really rough, and you've got to get some support. So really reach out.
Absolutely. Val?
One thing I'd like to remind people too is that even if you are a mom that struggles with low supply or things aren't going perfectly, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing type of event. There can be, we've had moms come in and their plan is from the get-go is to exclusively pump. That's a good fit for them and their circumstances. Ours is not to create your plan. Ours is to help support you in whatever your plan is. But I think sometimes people feel less than if they don't have the production that they thought, or they have to supplement. And I'm talking about on a long-term basis. And sometimes that plan can be developed after an outpatient visit when it's discovered that this is part of the issue. So I think it's important to realize that you can still nurse your baby with low supply. If you want to, there's ways of making this plan work for you. Our department was started by somebody that had a very low supply back probably 40 years ago. And she nursed her first child for 2 years and supplemented every time. So I think sometimes people forget about that it doesn't have to be exactly by the textbook. It can be a varied experience for whatever's going to work for you.
Absolutely. Kimberly, anything you want to add before we end?
Val said it all. Yeah, just be patient with yourself. And as I tell the moms who take the class, just because you are sitting here learning, your baby's not in utero listening to me. They're not in there on YouTube learning how to latch.
Taking notes.
It is a learned art for both of you. Be patient with yourself. Enjoy your baby though. That as a mom, that's the utmost, it's a priority. You need to enjoy this baby, enjoy motherhood. And I will tell you, of the 6 LCs here that are currently working, I had every breastfeeding issue known to man. And yes, I kind of bet I beat it. In earlier years, I did beat myself up because I could, I thought, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that. And I don't take that stance anymore. I breastfed, and I feel confident that I did the best that I could at the time. And there's no such, I only did this. And I walk into new moms now, or actually moms who've had other babies. Well, I only breastfed for 4 months, or there is no only. You breastfed and you did an amazing job, and be proud of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with mothers. We need to support ourselves, and we need to build each other up, not break each other down. So, well, that's, as a mom, having done it, I definitely say, yeah, you're going to do a great job. You're an amazing job, and just use us as support and take the classes, come in having some knowledge base, and it will definitely lessen a lot of anxiety for you.
Absolutely. That's excellent advice, and lean on your support system. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. Breastfeeding can definitely be a joyful bonding experience between mom and baby, but it is often overwhelming. And we just want to make sure that the resources that we've shared today can be helpful for you on this exciting journey. Thank you so much to you, our viewers, for tuning in to Ask the Experts today. If you have questions about breastfeeding or want to learn more, our website is mybaby.mwhc.com. And be sure to watch the Mary Washington Healthcare Facebook pages and other social media channels to stay informed of the latest health and wellness information for our community. Again, thank you for joining us today. Please stay safe and healthy, and have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.